In this video, I'm going to conduct some data transformation to transform the game log data into a format that's going to support other forms of analysis. So if we take a look at the game log data frame, we can see that it contains one row for each game played. So this is data that's really focused on a game level. Rather than focused on the team's performance in that game. While it has team performance, the data is structured so that it has both the visiting team and the home team and their performance in that game. So what I want to do is I want to be able to summarize team performance not just in a game, but over the entire season. So the data has to be transformed into a different format. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this R script here. So I'm going to close there, and here's the R script. I'm going to walk through the code and transform that data from the game log format, where it's at the game level, to looking at more of a team-centric data set. So first thing I want to do is set my working directory, and I'm going to load tidyverse. All right, so now the next step, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to create a new data frame called home games. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select specific columns that are related to the home teams for each of these game log data. For each of these games in the game log. So again, game log is consisting of data from 1960 through 2022, and it has one row for each game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the columns, let's say 7, 11. So what I'm doing is I'm selecting the columns that are specific to the home team. So that's what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to select the home team columns, and I'm going to put all of those columns into a new data frame called home games. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that. All right, so now I have my home games, and so this is just the the data related to the home team. All right, now what I'm going to do is I need to come up with a column to determine which team won, because what I want to be able to do is add up all the wins and all the losses for season level statistics. So I'm going to create a column, and I'm going to say if the home team won, we're going to have a win column created, and we're going to put a 1 in there. So that way I can add up all the ones, and that'll be the sum of that is going to be the number of wins in that season. And similarly, if the home team lost or the visiting team won, I'm going to place a 1 in the loss column so that I can add up all the number of losses for that home team. So here I'm going to do the home team wins and the home team losses. And if I open up my home games data frame now and go to the end, you can see that I have the previous value, which is what I'm getting this from. I have home team. So the winner was the home team. In this case, that was a win. But if those home games where the visiting team won, that's a loss. So now it's indicating, rather than the home team or visiting team that won, I'm indicating from the home perspective, was it a loss or a win? Okay, so now what I want to do next is I want to rename all of these columns. So actually, one more thing. Column 61. What I want to do there is I no longer need column 61, which is the winner column. So I'm going to remove this data from the data frame. Since I'm getting that data now in the wins and losses columns, this winner column is no longer needed. So I'm going to remove that. So you can see here I had 63 variables, and now I remove that, and now I have 62 variables. All right, after that, I'm going to rename my columns. And with this data set, what I want to do is I need to have it in the same format as the away games. So I want the columns to be in the same alignment. So that means I'm going to have to rearrange the columns, and that's what I'm doing here is I'm rearranging the columns, placing them in a different column order. So there we go. I have the columns arranged in a different order so that when I do the same thing with my away games, the column names or the columns are going to be in the same order so that I can simply combine them. All right, so then my away games, here I'm going to go back to my game log and pull all the columns that are relevant to the away team. So now I do that, and I have my away games. And here is focus on the visiting team and their performance. So keep in mind that sometimes your team is going to be the home team, sometimes they're going to be the visiting team. So I need to separate these out. So now I actually have one row in each data frame for a given game. So the game data is split across two data frames. One is the performance of the home team, one is the performance of the visiting team. And then when I later combine them by the team name, I'll have all the home games and away games for that team all together. And that's what I'm doing here. And that's why, since I need to combine them, that's why I had to rearrange my column order so that they will match when I combine them. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing for determining winners and losers. I'm going to, for the visiting team, again, this is visiting team focused. So if the visiting team won, I want to note that that was a win. If the visiting team lost, I'm going to note that that's a loss. So wins and losses, I'm going to create that column, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove that winner column just like I did with my home games data frame. Remove that, and then rename my columns. So now if I go to my away games data frame, I can see I have all the column names, and that's going to be the same order as my home games. So year, teams, runs, opponent runs, at bat, hits, and if I do that, I can see that the same column names. So the data is the same, structured the same order, so then I can combine them. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use the rbind to bind the rows between the two data frames and combine it into a new data frame called team games. I'm going to do that and then go ahead and remove the two temporary data frames, home games and away games. Now if I open up team games, we can see, first of all, we can see that there's twice as many rows because it combined the two data frames. So now I have 264,000 rows. Look at that. All right, so that's my my data frame that I'm going to work with. Now I have one row for each team. They combined wins and losses. So there's actually one row for all home games and one row for all team and away games for each of the teams. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to aggregate. So I'm not interested in having game level data for this for future analysis. What I want to be able to do is look at the team performance across seasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to aggregate the data and add up all this performance measures for a given season. So I can add up the total number of hits, the total of runs, total number of home runs and strikeouts and so forth for each of the teams for each season. So for any given team for that season, I'm going to have a total number of their performance measures, home runs, RBIs, and so forth. So when I enter that, now I have a new data frame called team seasons. And here for each season, there's one row for each team. And that shows their total number of runs scored for that season, the number of opponent runs that scored, the number of runs that they gave up in that season, the total number of bats, and so forth. So all these performance measures are for the entire season for that team. And that's what I ended up with. So and that's the type of data that I need to be able to do an analysis on team performance over a season. And so that did require me to convert that data from a single game row instance. So this is more game focused, where the two teams and their performance is combined into a single row. I needed to separate that out, focus on and to be able to look at it this by team, and then combine all or aggregate all the team games to get a team seasons table, so now, or data frame. So now I have data that's focused on the team and their cumulative performance across that season. So this is the data transformation that I did to my data, again, to move it to game level data to team season level data. And it required some transformation. The transformation's done. Now I have the data in this format to be able to use for future analysis.